Hello, everyone, and welcome back to yet another edition of the CalSoft podcast, your premier source for discussions on all things tech. I'm your host, Shantanu Pant, and with me today is Hrishikesh Bhosale. Hi, Rishikesh.
Hello, Shantanu. Thanks for that wonderful introduction.
Hey, so just to introduce this episode's guest, Rishikesh is a principal UX designer with over 8 years of experience. He's worked closely with project managers, stakeholders, and engineers to define, construct, and improve user experience at every single part of the product lifecycle. Well, let's jump right into today's topic, which is the role of AI in modern UX. I've got a couple of questions about the current AI situation. I'd like to know your take on them.
Sure, Shantanu. So, if I ask you to name any field that's full of complex, intractable problems and that has gobs of data, you'll probably name any field that is actively looking to incorporate artificial intelligence. Correct? So, if you think about it, there are direct consumer applications of AI, from virtual assistants such as Alexa and Siri to the algorithms powering Facebook and Twitter timelines, and also to the recommendation that shape our media consumption habits on platforms such as Netflix and Spotify. So I would say AI has truly achieved an appeal and in a manner which we have never seen before. It's no longer associated with geeks and nerds. AI is currently now selling products and providing an exceptional experience.
I see. So, from what I've read, that like AI and UX have just recently become famous in the mainstream, but apparently both of these technologies are pretty old. Can you tell us a little more about where these technologies are coming from?
That's true, Shantanu. So the term AI and artificial intelligence was basically originated by computer scientist John McCarthy, Marvin Minsky, Nathaniel Rochester, and Claude Shannon in the year 1955. They defined AI as making a machine behave in ways that would be called intelligent if a human were so behaving. But Shantanu, but of course, if you say this still leaves the definition of AI widely open to interpretation based on the subjective definition of what is intelligent behavior, correct?
True.
So there are alternative definitions, such as one offered by Roger Schenck. In 1991, Roger Schenck laid out four possible definitions of AI. To describe them, the first would be the technology that can divine insights with no direction from humans. Technology that can divine insights with no direction from humans. Second, inference engines that can be fed information about any particular field and calculate proper courses of action. Third, any technology that does something that has never been done by technology before. And fourth, any machine which is capable of learning, which we currently call as machine learning.
I see.
So Shantanu, you see, this is how AI, basically originated. But to now move to the user experience, Don Norman coined the term user experience in the year 1993 while he was working with the company Apple. He describes the user experience as a holistic concept incorporating the entirety of an experience of buying and using a product. But I would say in the current view, user experience encompasses all aspects of end user interaction, whether it's with company, its service, or its product. At the core, UX is about ensuring the users find value in what businesses are providing them. Peter Moville represents this through his user experience honeycomb. He mentions that for a meaningful and valuable user experience, information must be useful, usable, desirable, findable, accessible, and credible. So, Shantanu, if you compare it closely, you can see that the emergence of artificial intelligence is closely timed with that of user experience, both coming at the advent of the computer age.
That makes sense. So, given that UX and AI both came into being so close together, how well do they work together?
That's a good question, Shantanu. And I'd like to answer that and answer this question in with an example. So let's say when you think of user experience, you would consider these adjectives and adverbs that describes the user interaction. For example, addictive, fun, engaging, intuitive, and so on. These are the descriptors that convey the user experience is great. We as UX professionals can't help but look at AI as simply an application. It is not just about what AI can do for us. We believe that peering at AI through a UX prism will be instructive, and a good experience is vital to ensure the success and the future propagation of AI. AI has always been formulated considering piece of codes and function, but what if we could get AI to help with the experience as well, right? And doing so, what we tend to ignore all too often is, once AI can help with the experience, what will it be like to use AI to do an X or a user's task, for example? And in other words, we need to think about what the experience of using AI products will be like in the early stages of the product when the product is just an idea or an established one. Let's say, for example, it's good to have an AI app which can convert speech to text to action, correct?
Yeah.
But consider this. If the speech is in a crowded bar and the speaker just had their dental work, how useful is this AI app?
Not very.
Correct. So most AI applications already have plenty of useful functions. But what good are the functions if the user can't use them or doesn't know how to access them? Therefore, Shantanu, I would say that the products which are embedded with new technology do not automatically ensure success. And a positive interaction is essential, which I think user experience can provide and work seamlessly with AI.
Interesting. Okay, so they are born together, and according to you, they work together fairly well. But
Correct.
what are the ways in which UX can integrate with AI seamlessly?
Yes, absolutely. With UX, as we described, as an important driver for success, correct? So, how UX integrates into AI-enabled product starts with the introduction of UX framework. The definition of UX framework is a method of considering user experience while designing an AI application. This framework is closely rooted with the classic user-centered design or UCD, where we focus that user is at the center and not the technology. The UX framework consists of AI UX principles. To understand how a UX framework can be applied to AI, we can consider these three AI UX principles, which are context, interaction, and trust. So, Shantanu, let's talk about context. To define context, it includes the outside information that AI can use to perform a task. It can include information about the user and why they are making the request, as well as the information about the external world. Those who work on AI-enabled products need to understand the context of its output, what its output means, how it compares to objectives and expectations, and many more. A good example of this would be credit card frauds, text, and search suggestions. Now, to talk about interaction principle, it refers to AI engaging the user in a way in which they can respond. Now, that engagement could come into many forms: a message in the AI's interface, a text message, a push notification in the smartphone, and many more. In summary, before AI takes a potential impact action on a user's behalf, it should attempt to interact with the user. Here I would say, Shantanu, communication is key and plays an important role. That is the experience AI needs and the interaction which needs to be designed. A good example of this would be banking WhatsApp services.
I see.
Now let's talk about trust. Trust is when users feel that AI system will successfully perform a task that a user wants it to perform, right? And I would say without any unexpected outcomes. But trust is sticky. That is, if user trusts a service, they're likely to keep trusting it. And if they don't trust it, they're likely to continue to mistrust it. A good example of this would be Siri and Alexa, or any voice assistant or virtual assistant. Now, to summarize, I would say trust is vitally important to users' adoption, and it can also be easily lost. Therefore, developers need to be careful to design an experience that can put the trust principle at risk.
Okay, so context, interaction, and trust.
Yeah.
Makes sense. So, based on all of this, how can AI enhance the experience of an end user?
So, Shantanu, in my opinion, I think this is the most promising yet the least explored question in our
Hmm.
industry. Experience which are powered by artificial intelligence have just started to come up, right? And it won't take long until smart experiences becomes the new normal. So to give you a few examples of this, let's take Facebook. So Facebook uses AI to understand the content in the images you upload. And Shantanu, there are two practical uses that are achieved here. First, Facebook can read the content of the photo for users with visual impairments who browse the platform using screen reader software.
Oh,
Okay. And second, knowing what's in the photo, Facebook can target you more relevant advertising and charge more from the advertisers. So this was basically Facebook. Now let's talk about Google. Google has recently updated Translate to incorporate elements of AI in the way sentences are analyzed and translated. More recently, Google has also introduced its visual search technology, Google Lens, which also uses AI to recognize the user's camera, what the user's camera is pointing to, and display content that might be relevant for them. Therefore, I would say technology can help us automate repetitive tasks and free up our time to focus on the more strategic angle. But also, we need to make sure that we design experiences that are more meaningful, personalized, relevant, smart, and efficient for the users.
well, Rishikesh, I gotta say that is absolutely fascinating. But unfortunately, I think that's all the time we have for today. It's quite clear that AI is going to create some incredible user experiences going forth, and I hope to be able to see them. Thank you so much for being a part of this conversation, and I hope to see you on the podcast again soon.
Thank you for having me, Shantanu.
Well, this has been the Calsoft podcast featuring Hrishikesh Bhosale. This was a fascinating look at how the intersection of AI and UX is going to change tech experiences, and indeed how it already has. Stay tuned for future podcasts where we explore the latest tech concepts and advancements. Thank you for listening.